We made it! Media Content Day camp opens. Big three storylines of the camp next on Locked on Jazz. Bum 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 bum. Pow.
You are Locked on Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network. Your team every day.
How are you? I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked on Jazz. It's your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. It's content day. Camp starts. We're underway. Woohoo! We made it. The season is officially here. I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. Gosh, I'm fired up. I got to share a story. Here's the show today. Eric Spryopoulos, who does the digital writing for UtahJazz.com, is going to join us. We'll talk about position groups and combinations and have a really, really good conversation. And then I'm going to hit you with the big three storylines of the season. Okay. This, in my hand, right here, for those of you on YouTube, is a watch. And the angle on it there, now you can see it. It has the Utah Jazz logo in it. And I found this watch yesterday while cleaning up the office, getting ready for the season. And the watch came to me courtesy of Zales. When I was a kid going to Jazz games, and my program was signed by Ricky Green. And I got to go out to mid-court and get awarded this Zales watch. So for Media Day 2025, I am wearing my Jazz Zales watch. Doesn't actually work right now. It'll be right twice today. One of them will be right now because I just set it to 6:04 a.m. Kind of cool. All right. Thank you very much for tuning in. I think I blew the open somewhere. If you're an everydayer, you know I love you and I appreciate all you've done to build Locked On into the #1 sports network in the country. If you're taking the time to make this your first listen, you know I super appreciate you. And today's show is brought to you in part by FanDuel. Right now, new customers bet $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. Three storylines. And the first and foremost, and frankly, the one we'll be watching every single day, is the young kid from Georgia, via Rutgers. Will have a spotlight on him despite being 18 years old for the entire year. Arius Ace Bailey. We're going to watch him. The reports are terrific. He's got everything. He's got every accolade to this point. McDonald's All-American, Jordan Brand Classic, Nike Hoop Summit, top player in the country, 5-star recruit, all of it. Kansas, Kentucky, Oregon, Texas, and he goes to Rutgers. Surprises everyone. Dana and Nil. And a lot of tumultuous stuff. None of it actually matters. What's going to matter is length, athleticism, pizzazz, energy, and really the #1 storyline of camp is what is he ready to handle? What is Ace Bailey ready to handle? Can he start? Can he play 20 a night? Can he play 30 a night? Can he play 10 a night? He's 18 years old. He is a pup. He is grade 19, August 13th, one day after my birthday. He is just turned 19, and he's just a baby. And that will be the #1 storyline. And as Ben Anderson said so well in our interview series, it'll really be the #1 storyline of every night of the entire season. There's a lot of hype on this kid, pressure on this kid, and we'll see what happens. And we'll watch him intently and look for signs, and we'll be blown away, and he'll do things that are ridiculous, and the stories out of training camp are already ridiculous of how high he gets and where he blocks balls and how he touches balls and does all these crazy things, and his length and his defense and everything. pretty great. The number 2 storyline of camp to me are all the stories of Keonte jumping real. Are all the stories of Keonte George, intensity this offseason, his work ethic, real. Actually, let me back that up. They are all real. Do they parlay into a different player? A mature, calm, emotionless player. As much as anything, can Keonte roll through an NBA game or training camp without emotional swings that lead to problems? Right? He's got to add a level of maturity inside of a game. It's super hard. Same thing you talk about like with a young golfer. Keonte, the stories are true. I know it for a fact. Keonte, his body is incredible. His athleticism is off the charts right now. He has worked diligently. He is committed to the craft. He has taken every tough conversation and lesson seriously. He has shown great signs. And now the question is, does all that work pay off? Just because you put in the work doesn't mean it always pays off. But for a 21-year-old, almost 22, he has shown the signs of everything you could imagine of why Danny Ainge just believed in him so much when he took him as the 16th pick of the draft. And frankly, I've said this about Key a lot. The ball's just got to go in. Truthfully, in 3 years of his basketball career, Baylor and Utah, the ball's never gone in. Shot 38% at Baylor, 39.1% in both years in Utah. If the ball doesn't go in, none of this matters. And the ball's got to go in at a higher rate, and he's got to have better shot distribution. And then he's got to defend. But that's an emotional game. The last one, I don't know how we'll judge it or see it or know, but to me, the story of this camp is going to be an authentic team. The last few years have been a team, and then we trade Simone Fontecchio and Kelly Olynyk, and we rip the rug out from under the team. And then it's a little less authentic the rest of the way. And then we do kind of the same thing the next year. And then last year, we just had a bizarre element to the whole year. This team may not win a lot of games, may not parlay into 35 or 45 wins, but it should be an authentic team that every night its effort is headed in the right direction. And maybe most importantly, how you play will dictate your time on the floor. The other one is, how will the ball move? Eric and I will get into this here in just a minute. Eric Spiropoulos, the Jazz digital writer, and we haven't talked about this in any of our other interviews. Eric was really great. We did touch on a bunch of things we didn't talk about with other people. Colin Sexton and Jordan Clarkson, wonderful players, do great things. Two of the best isolation players in the game. They're isolation players. The ball gets them. It just stops. So how does the ball move? How does the team change? What is this team look like authentically? And then how do players get rewarded and frankly punished based on their performances? Punished is the wrong word, but you understand what I'm saying. Like, how is it going to be when a player doesn't play well or doesn't defend or doesn't do things he's supposed to do? Will Hardy will have the authority to make those moves. And we will see an authentic team that we have not seen over the last 2.5 years. And we'll see Will Hardy be able to coach an authentic team. There is a juice to the coaching staff right now for this upcoming season. Those are the three storylines to me of camp. We are here. It is media day. Thank you for riding the offseason with us. We get here. Eric Spiropoulos joins us next. Did Jazz Digital beat writer. You may not know him well, but you'll really like him by the end of this conversation. He comes up and joins us here in just a moment on Locked on Jazz. Today's show is brought to you by Murdoch Hyundai, located at 4646 South State Street, also in Logan and in Linden. The Murdochs have been in Utah for nearly 100 years, committed to making sure you have a no regrets experience. That's always been the slogan. I sat down with them now 7-8 years ago. We're probably at 8 years now. And that's what they told us. We want to make sure that everyone leaves this place with no regrets. That was their slogan at the time. And that's really their mantra of who they are as a company and as people. I've gotten to know Blake well, interact with him, and talk about authentic teams. This is an authentic dude. It's what I like most about Blake more than anything. The Hyundai car lineup is great. The Santa Fe, you're seeing more and more of them out there. It is really great. And the new Palisade is as well. The Santa Fe hybrid I'm driving right now, I would strongly suggest you taking a moment to try to see if you can check it out, see if it matches for you. It has got great size, incredible power, super control, and you fill up the tank. My son drove to Colorado and back the other day and fill up the tank once. It's amazing. It's all at Murdoch Hyundai, located at 4646 South State Street, also in Logan and in Linden. And I want to make sure that you get the opportunity to get the VIP experience that you deserve by being a Locked On Everydayer. So if you're heading over that direction, make sure you email me first and let's get you set up with the meeting that you deserve by being a Locked On Everydayer. Today's show is also brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Caffeine just got a flavor upgrade. 5 Hour Energy shots delivered tasty caffeine in 17 bold flavors. Each 2-ounce shot packs the caffeine of a premium 12-ounce cup, plus B vitamins and nutrients with 0 sugar and 0 crashes. That's why you love how it is, how portable they are. Big taste, tiny shot. You can take them anywhere and get the boost you need. 17 different flavors. You can find one that you love. I promise. It kicks in. It's sugar-free. You don't have to worry about crashing later. So enough with the boring, flavorless caffeine. It's time to give you your caffeine a flavor upgrade with a 5 Hour Energy shot. Get the favorites you love to be bold. Try something new in-store, online at 5hourenergy.com or visit Amazon today. The interview series continues, probably introducing you to someone here. Eric Spiropoulos is the digital writer for the Utah Jazz, and I'm sure you've read him at utahjazz.com. You may never have seen him if you're watching on YouTube. You've only heard him because he fills in occasionally on our pre-halftime and post-game show. Does a really nice job on that. So, Eric, welcome to your first ever Locked On Jazz appearance. Glad to have you aboard and glad to let the Jazz fans get to know you a little bit. You did a really nice series recently kind of previewing, and that's where I want to start. The guard line might be – actually, let me ask you. You did guards, you did wings, and you did bigs. What did you find – do you think is the most interesting? As we open camp, what do you think is the most interesting of these position battles?
I think in terms of position battles, probably the backcourt. I think the front court is the most interesting collection of skill sets, but maybe not necessarily specific positional battles. But I think the backcourt, when you look at Isaiah, Keyonte, Walt, Bryce, like that's why I think it gets kind of interesting in terms of who's playing where and when.
What I think's interesting about all of this is that I think you could have written almost, other than Walker, I almost feel like you could have just written one preview. Right now, I don't think Kyle can really play the two, but to some extent when Kyle plays, he's kind of playing with the ball in his hands a lot, and he can do a lot of that. Nurkic, I think, is probably a true 5. But the one that gets interesting about that guard line is, and Bowler Jack was the first one on this interview series to bring it up, but how much does Ace Bailey play? The 2 this year. I'm beginning, as we've done these series and have more conversations, it makes more and more sense to me that Ace Bailey's actually part of that positional group that's guards, which makes it even more fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, I think in each of those 3 articles, I had to have like a caveat line of like positions, they're not real. You know, I'm trying my best to just make it a little bit more organized for people to kind of digest the information. But I did an article before that preview series, basically looking at just like a few lineup combinations that I was intrigued by this season. And one of them is kind of a going big group where Ace is at the 2 next to Keyonte. And then you have Lowry, Taylor, and Walker. And, you know, as I kind of went through the position group previews, and obviously I put Ace on the wing because, you know, the Jazz don't have that many true wings anyways. You know, I agree that I think there should be a good amount of opportunity for Ace at the 2 when you look at all the guys in the front court that you might want to try and get on the floor, and also just the ability to have that size, you know, given his shot making ability. I think that combination at the 2 is deadlier than at the 3 or even at the 4, which he obviously will probably play as well.
And I was talking to someone the other day who knows the game better than I do. They made an interesting point to me that most young, great players have only read the game from the top. But that's where they always have been ever since they were whatever years old. They've had the ball at the top. To ask Ace Bailey to suddenly start understand the game for the wing is a much bigger ask. And then the other one I didn't think about that they mentioned was how much more physically demanding it is to play out of the corners when you're being grabbed and being held. So it makes a lot of sense, both on the ease of transition and then, you know, Ace is 18 years old and really physically not all the way there yet.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I think there should be Whether that's, necessarily the day one starting lineup, which I think is, completely up in the air, as you've been talking about with your guests last week, or it's just something they go to during games, or eventually that becomes the starting lineup. I think if you're looking towards the right path for Ace's development, a healthy amount of minutes at the 2 is probably a key ingredient in that recipe. And then obviously working through the other combinations you want to get out there and seeing which skill sets match the most. Then you kind of get some minutes at the 3, even the 4 in some smaller lineups. I think you don't want to limit him to just kind of, you're only on the wing, you're playing out of the corner. You want to give him all those reps, especially in year 1.
I think you've probably nailed 4 of the 5 starters. I'd be super surprised if, considering how horrific that injury was and what the road back is, that we threw Taylor out as a starting 4. I mean, if we get there at some point in the season, that would be fabulous. That would be way beyond any expectation I would ever have for Taylor. I don't have any idea who I think the 5th starter is, but I do. The closer we get to this, it does feel like Keyonte, Ace, Lowry, and Walker are probably, it's there for their taking. If somebody has a really brutal camp, then that's totally different. But as we open camp, I feel like 4 of the 5 starting positions are there for the taking, and for those guys. And I think any of 4 guys could end up being the 5th one.
Yeah, I think that's the most interesting aspect is, I know you've been talking about Bryce as that 5th starter. I know Ben was talking about Flip being that 5th starter. I think of those 2, I probably would lean Bryce. I think the fit is a little bit cleaner. Obviously there's defensive concerns, I think, with both of them, whether in the backcourt for Bryce or in the front court for Flip. I still wouldn't rule out Isaiah starting to start the year. I get the kind of concern about, he's not going to be able to shoot. Walker's not a shooter. Ace's percentage is probably not going to be super high year 1. Obviously you've got, Lowry can space the floor great. And Keyonte, I think, can space the floor. The percentages haven't been great. I wouldn't rule out Isaiah just for the fact of like a guy who can get downhill and create some chaos for the opposing defense. I mean, the Jazz, were really low last year in terms of shots at the rim. And Isaiah, when he was out there, he's not necessarily finishing all of them. The guys he's dishing it to, not always finishing, but he can get downhill. Whether he can do that when guys are even more locked in on him, in year 2 is the question. But I wouldn't rule it out just for that playmaking and downhill driving ability that he brings, that he could still be the starting point guard.
Player combinations are going to be fascinating. I mean, you alluded to it in your previous article. You kind of alluded to some in your previews. Who couples with who? And frankly, I thought Ben made a great point. We would really like it to be that Ace is the story every single night. But the fact is, separate Lowry out. Tier 1, we got Lowry. We have a top 50 player. Maybe Walker's 98th, according to ESPN. He didn't make the Locked On Top 100. He's kind of in that realm. And then everyone else, frankly, is just in a big, huge mosh pit of unranked players at this point. And I don't think anyone really knows who's the better of any of them. We all hope it's Ace, but we don't know. And I don't expect it to be Ace this year entirely. So it's a pretty fascinating question on like how this all plays out, who grabs those pieces, I said it badly in one of these interviews earlier. I talked about it as like, whose strength. I actually think it's who can cover their weakness well enough to allow their strength to shine.
Yeah, I agree with that. And yeah, I wrote that kind of in that lineups article I mentioned of, one of the more intriguing pairs that I'm kind of thinking about this season is matching Taylor Hendricks with Kyle Filipowski in the second unit. Obviously, Flip, the defensive concerns, not being able to protect the rim are kind of that big drawback for him so far. And, Taylor flashed a lot of that kind of help side, weak side rim protection in year 1. Last year in the few games he played, he started to show his ability to guard on the perimeter. I think when you're looking at combinations, especially in that second unit, which is why I think I kind of lean more towards like Flip playing more like backup 5, backup 4, is the ability to kind of more seamlessly pair him with a guy like Taylor who can potentially cover up Flip's weaknesses, and then Flip's shooting and passing can obviously make things flow a little bit easier offensively for that second unit. I think there's other, unique combinations of like Isaiah. In Summer League, we saw a couple of connections between Isaiah and Walt, and that's obviously a really small backcourt, but I think the shooting of Walt being kind of an off-ball shooter, running off screens, with Isaiah who can kind of just create chaos in transition and find Walt and find other guys, on the break. I think that's an interesting one that might come up But yeah, I think a lot of it is, when you look at how much depth there is, a lot of it is kind of like, how can this pair help both players shine a little bit more than just trying to look at the singular performance of one guy?
There's two things in there that are really interesting you brought up. So I'm going to go backwards. May wait a second to get to the other. I do really think the Collier-Clayton combination may complement each of them beautifully. That's really Collier-Clayton complements each other. I'm not ready. It's still preseason. In this sense, one, I love the idea of Isaiah in a 5-out lineup, frankly. He's not a threat in the pick and roll because he doesn't shoot enough threes. And then I'm just not totally sold that Clayton is a pure point guard yet. And I guess I have in my head, you have one or two plays always sticks to it. I thought he struggled a little bit in summer league under pressure. Now, summer league pressure is different because you get 9 fouls, so you can do a lot. But I thought that might be good for each of them if they don't have the ball in their hands all the time. And so I'm with you. I kind of like that combination.
Yeah, and I think, whether that's like specifically a second unit thing or just lineups that are rolled out there, you could put a guy like Flip at the 5 to get that 5-out spacing next to a guy like Taylor, hoping that Cody shoots it better, or Bryce could be slide down to the 3. And then you're talking about a lineup with, outside of Isaiah, a lot of shooting. And I think, getting out in the break, spacing the floor for Isaiah to attack downhill. I think Flip's ability to kind of handle the ball, initiate from like the elbows would be helpful for that group, especially for like a guy like Walt, and even Bryce too. So I think that, Isaiah has specific strengths and specific weaknesses. And I think that the task should be, obviously, outside of trying to develop those weaknesses and sharpen those strengths, the other task is putting him in those situations where the strengths at least can shine early on while the weaknesses are still being developed. And I think that kind of pairing with Walt or a 5-out lineup should be kind of a priority. All
right. We had the Anderson Austin prediction, the Bailey Bodacious prediction, and we're going to get the Spyropoulos Scrumptious prediction next. Plus, Yusuf Nurkic, I think, fits in here more than people realize. We'll touch on that as well as we continue on Locked On Jazz. Today's edition of Locked On Jazz is brought to you in part by our friends over at FanDuel. The NFL weekend is behind us. Monday Night Football is here. Hopefully you got in on the action and had a great weekend with FanDuel. And if you're a new customer right now, new customers get $5 bet. If you win, you get $300 in bonus bets. That's right. Pretty incredible deal for you. So pick a bet, put down $5. If it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com and get in on the action. Monday Night Football should be a good one. Dolphins are a 2.5-point favorite over the Jets, but they are the Jets. There's 2 Monday night games, remember. Broncos are a 7.5-point favorite over the injured Cincinnati Bengals, if you want to get in the action tonight. And on the WNBA front, the Aces are now the odds-on favorite to win the title over NBA. Yep, October 21st. They already have lines out for opening night of the NBA, and they even have lines out for the Jazz first game. We're an 8.5-point dog against the LA Clippers. It's all at FanDuel.com. Get your $5 bet and win. Make sure you win and get $300 in bonus bets at FanDuel.com. Time for our Spyropoulos Scrumptious. I was going to go with anything else, but let's go with it. Prediction for the 25-26 NBA season for the Utah Jazz.
You don't hear the word scrumptious too often, so I'm really glad that was the word choice. I can't correctly pronounce the other word I was going to use. So scrumptious is a great choice. I think going back to Bryce, I think there's a scenario, if your kind of vision of the starting lineup, doesn't come true of like Bryce starting, I think him kind of in a, whether it's a quote unquote 6-man role, I don't really think those are really as defined as they used to be, but in terms of 6-man of the year, I think his ability to kind of come in, there's no Colin Sexton, there's no Jordan Clarkson. I think he comes in, I mean, his numbers last year, I think per 36 was like almost 20 points per 36. He's not going to play 36 minutes a game, but I think there's a scenario where he comes in and averages 14, 15 points, again, 40% from 3, usually awards are given to teams that are winning a lot, so that probably holds them back. But we're talking about a scrumptious prediction here. And so I think Bryce Sensabaugh, being a dark horse 6th man of the year candidate is what I'm going to go with.
What's interesting on some of this, and you bring it up, and actually we haven't talked about it a great deal on these interview series, is just the no Colin Sexton, no Jordan Clarkson. And we just, obviously, guys played so intermittently the last 2 years that it's kind of hard to. But the fact of the matter is, no matter what you did offensively, the ball ended up in Colin Sexton and Jordan Clarkson's hands, and they were dribbling. And it could be really fascinating to see what happens and how the offense looks different and how individual players look different without those dominant personalities on the floor.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things that I don't think is necessarily being talked about too much is when you look at the subtraction of those two guards and then John Collins in the front court, those were 3 of like the higher mid-range volume guys for the Jazz, which again, the Jazz definitely focus on taking threes, but they don't get to the rim a lot. And there is a decent amount of mid-range attempts from those guys, as you said, with the ball in their hands, they're trying to create something on their own. That's gone. And I don't think, there's not necessarily guys who are brought in that you would look to as guys just put the ball in their hands and go to work. Obviously, eventually in time, Ace might be that, but I think in year 1, it's going to be more of like playing off screens, through the offense. So I think there is kind of this underrated aspect of the subtle, maybe stylistic changes offensively that go throughout the roster when you look at those guys not being here anymore and some of the newer guys being, like a guy like Walt, who's obviously going to be focused on scoring from 3. So I think that aspect, we'll see how that develops, but I think there will be some subtle changes in the offense this year with those subtractions.
I mean, if we're just honest about it, like the ball stuck with those 2 guys.
Yeah.
And the ball stuck in a manner with both of them effectively. Okay. Like I'm not criticizing them, but these are factual comments. They stuck in a manner in which the other players on the team had no idea where either of them were going. There's no pattern to Colin Sexton or Jordan Clarkson and how they're going to do things when they get the ball. So you're just kind of lost. And so I do think like the one thing is I'm hoping is like, just don't hold the ball. Like you take a bad shot, that's fine. Don't hold the ball. And I think that'll really change the way everything feels about this team.
Yeah, I agree. I think that aspect of it, playing a little bit more of like a system offense where the ball's always moving, guys are always kind of knowing where to be, not necessarily reacting off of like 1 or 2 guys with the ball in their hands like last year, but more specifically or more intent behind kind of the player movement, the ball movement, and then again, like trying to get out on the break when Isaiah's out there on the floor or in general, just trying to run, but especially with Isaiah, like try and create some of that chaos that you might not have had, as much last year. I think that'll be a big difference offensively.
Yeah, everything we're talking about is offensively, and obviously they have got to create some chaos defensively. 30th in the league in turnovers last year, both offense and defense. All right, Nurkic is going to be an interesting one because I think every time he plays, fans are going to, this is what happens, right? You just want to see it. The fact is, if you were to ask me the player on the Jazz roster who I think has a skill set to make the other players better, Yusuf Nurkic is number 1 on my list. His screen setting, he's actually a pretty good ball handler. His ability to play out and take just enough threes to keep you honest. Like he's actually he's a far better pick setter than Walker Kessler at this point in their careers. I don't have any of our guards that I feel like make anyone better. I know Isaiah creates havoc. I'm not sure I think someone's shooting. Keyonte shot better when he moved to the 2 off of Isaiah. I got that last year, but you can run through our numbers. There aren't a lot of guys where like everyone's numbers spike the minute they're on the floor with someone. Nurkic is the one guy who I actually think everyone's going to want to play with. Like if you're Keonte George, like, no, I want to give it to Nurkic and run a handoff off Nurkic. I want to play off of him. If I'm a cutter, I want to be there for Nurkic. Maybe Kyle. Kyle might be a little, but he's not a very good pick setter. So I think Nurkic has got to play on the offensive side because I actually think he's the one. Like if I had a Locke, I don't know my L word, I actually think Yusuf Nurkic will end up with the best plus minus on the team. Offensive.
Yeah. I think there is definitely a case for Nurkic to have a consistent role. Again, kind of goes to like, how are these minutes, especially Taylor's early recovery? I think there'll be some limitations. I think that's early in the season. I think it's easier to get Nurkic out there pretty regularly. I think the screen setting is huge. I mean, the amount of off-ball actions the Jazz run, obviously just in the pick and roll, opening things up for their guards, like that is such an underrated skill, and he is obviously great at that. I think there's also kind of like a physicality element of him where he's bruising on the glass. He's just setting these big, nasty screens on guys. Like there's kind of an element of there that the Jazz not necessarily had recently. And, again, this is not a team competing in the playoffs. They're not fighting against the best in the league, but this is a team that you want to have that presence down low. And again, I think, like you said, he is an underrated playmaker as a big man. I think everyone talks about Filipowski's playmaking, and rightly so, but there's an easy way to envision a similar kind of role for Nurk, where he's kind of at the elbow. He sets a bruising screen, gets it at the elbow, cutter, shooter, off-ball action. There's a lot of ways for him to make an impact. And I think early on is probably the most we'll see him, depending on the recovery of Taylor and just the growth and development of some of those other young guys in the front court.
And I don't know how much George Niang was penciled in to the lineup, if at all, but with his injury being out and Taylor recovering, Kyle sliding to the 4 might make some more sense. Furthermore, how we play defense is going to be the issue there. What happens defensively, I think, is going to be a major part of this. Is like, are we playing a style where Kyle can defend? Are we switching 1 through 5 so it doesn't matter what position Kyle's playing? Are we always playing a drop big, in which case then Nurkic or Kessler has to be on the floor? Are we playing a bunch of zone? Then it doesn't matter. Then you got to rebound. What we do defensively matters. All right. You've listened to some of these. I wasn't totally planning on giving you this one, but this is my favorite question of where the Jazz are today. And I just can't help myself because I think this is the most fun, most fascinating. And this is kind of, to my mind, I almost think I should have a ticker on the bottom of Locked On Jazz all season long with the answer to this question and how it changes night to night. So excluding Ace Bailey, excluding Lauri Markkanen, excluding Walker Kessler, Ben and I miscommunicated on that. There are 7 other players. The way the roster is being built, everydayers have all heard this enough times, I'm not going to go through all of it. We don't need all 7 to hit. It'd be great if they all 7 hit because then we trade them it'd be fabulous. We really only need 2 or 3 of these players to emerge as rotation players. I think in fairness, I don't expect any of these 7 to be a top 50 player in the NBA. I think it'll be borderline if any of these 7 are top 100 players, but we'd like it. If they could be Tamari Kamara, that's a top 100 player in the NBA. Herb Jones, a top 100 player in the NBA. So maybe they can get into the 80s or 90s. Who of these 7 do you think are most likely on this date as we record in late September of 2025? We will not hold you to this forever. You're allowed to change it 70, 82 times during the season. If you had to choose your 2 or 3 players most likely to be in the rotation when the Jazz play their next playoff game, who are they?
Taylor is the first one for me. I think the defense, the physical tools, and the ability to be, 36, 37% from 3 can get you in a playoff rotation. Obviously, you got to sharpen a few things, but I think he's the first one that jumps to mind for me. I'm kind of torn. I'm going to do 3 guys, and I think it's going to be Keyonte and Flip. I think Keyonte mainly for if he can start to become 37% from 3. The pull-up 3 is such a valuable skill. I mean, his ability to kind of raise up. He's had some moments where he's been able to create off the dribble. If that can just become more of an actual tool that can be weaponized, I think the value of that when you're looking at playoff basketball is huge. And the playmaking has come along a little bit. I think that can still continue to develop, but refine the shot selection. I think the skill set and just the ability to hit pull-up 3s, out of the pick and roll is such a valuable tool. And then Flip, I think. I get the defensive concerns. I think if you're looking at a playoff rotation, he's a backup big, but a backup big that can come in, handle it a little bit, shoot it a little bit, rebounds pretty well. I think that is a valuable skill set. And then you just kind of have to figure out how you can cover for him on the defensive end. But I'm going to go with, I think, those 3. Walt is a tough exclusion for me. I think Walt has a similar case to Keyonte where it's if the pull-up shooting becomes a real weapon, I think he competes defensively. I think he can develop his playmaking and ball handling. It's not been great right now. I think he's the toughest exclusion, but would follow that kind of Keonte George path.
I'm fascinated to watch Walton his size, right?
Yeah.
And here's it. I don't think this will be the case, but I want to watch this. I'll never forget when I saw Reed Shepherd last year for the first time, and it's going to be a highlight all season long in Houston now. I loved Reed Shepherd out of the draft. He and Walt Clayton were very similar players in how efficient they were and Reed Shepherd got on an NBA floor. I don't remember how early we played Houston, but I could look it up over here in my massive crap. But it must have been early. And I remember going, oh my gosh, he's miniature. Mm-hmm. He's miniature. And I want to see, Summer League does not tell the story. If I went to practice on Tuesday, the thing I would most curious to look at would be how Walt Clayton looks physically compared to other NBA players. That to me is going to be the most curious thing, because the skills, you're right, all are there, Peyton Pritchard-esque, all that kind of stuff. But if you're really 6'2", 6'1" in this league, the only guys that are doing that well are Trae Young, Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland. Like, they're top 40 players they're top 10, top 20, top 30 players in the NBA. It's a super hard route. So if he looks fine, great, let's go. Then I'm with you. That is like, when we get into these things, the physical, like I've said this as well, like I'm close to still having Cody as one of my 3, just because I think by the time he does all his weight work, his physical numbers are all going to be right. Yeah,
I agree. I think there is a Cody and Taylor is an interesting discussion of, like, if both of them somehow hit to their kind of higher end outcomes, you're looking at a pretty stout defensive, wing rotation. That guys can hit the 3 and maybe do a little bit with the ball in their hands, and maybe in Cody's case. But yeah, I think with Walt, it is interesting. There's been a lot of comps to Pritchard, and I think understandably so, with the size and the skill set. I think if he gives that kind of defensive effort and hits his threes and just kind of like is a bulldog in a way, kind of like something with like Isaiah. Like, Isaiah's bigger, but like Isaiah having that kind of like TJ McConnell mindset would do a huge thing for his potential career. Just like if you're coming in off the bench for Walt or for Isaiah, be a bulldog. If you're Walt, hit your threes and be a bulldog. If you're Isaiah, attack, be a bulldog, play make. Like, those are things that need to kind of develop. And if they do, there's a path for them.
The other team needs to go, oh crap.
Yeah.
Like, when you check in the game, the feeling has to be like, oh crap, Isaiah Collier just checked in. He's going to be guarding me. Like, you have to have that. Flip's the other one. I'll just leave it on this. I'm super curious on Flip. His summer league was awesome. It was everything he wanted to be. He shot 35% from 3 last year and never shot 35% from 3 for one stretch of the entire season. So I still have no idea what he is as a shooter. And then I want to see, can he finish on the rim against NBA frontline guys, not second year? If he can do those 2 things offensively, then yes, he's so good offensively. We'll figure the rest of it out. Eric, thank you so much. Keep up the great work. UtahJazz.com, digital writer. Super to have you on the show. Hopefully we'll do it again throughout the year. We're going to try to add some programming to this. So, we'll reach out to you. And you'll continue, I'm sure, to be doing the pre-halftime post-game show when we need you. So you've been great on that. So thank you so much for the time. Appreciate it. And I'll see you throughout the week and throughout the month and throughout the months. So good to see you.
Thank you, sir. It's been an honor.
That is Locked On Jazz. We will bring it now to the first ever 24/7 national NBA channel on YouTube, Locked On NBA. Plus, check out the daily edition of Locked On NBA and Locked On NBA Game Nights right around the corner as well.